Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to your fave film critic, the podcast that I host, and I'm the only guest. It's just me. Your favorite film critic, Dom Griffin, me here. This is episode 6. We've made it 6 episodes straight. I'm actually pretty stoked about that. I have lots of stuff to talk about today, so I hope you guys are excited to listen to that happening. Same old format, that we've been doing. We're going to talk about a few things in the news, really just like 2.5 things. And then we're going to talk about all the movies I watched this week. And then I'll answer a couple of questions. And if you guys noticed, if you have not watched, I put out a video this week for the first time in a few weeks. I reviewed Blue Beetle, which I saw Monday night. And I really actually mostly liked it. I thought it was a pretty damn good movie. I was pretty bummed out to see... There was like a big discourse on Twitter of people being angry, sort of justified, that Oppenheimer is being taken off of most like digital IMAX screens. Like a lot of the AMC ones that like aren't, a lot of them aren't real, whatever. In exchange for Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle, at the time that people were discovering this, when they were like Monday or Tuesday, before the review embargo lifted, before there were any like real impressions of the movie and stuff, and also usually like right when tickets had gone on sale. Like I don't think Blue Beetle was a movie that a lot of exhibitors had like early pre-sales for, the way they have with other big movies. On like Monday or Tuesday, people were taking screenshots of the AMC website. Look at how empty this is. The same old with the DC movie fans not showing up to the theater, all that meme stuff. And it was just like, look at how much money they're going to lose on playing this movie. And like, look, if I had an IMAX screen, me personally, at the theater that I run, I would keep Oppenheimer on it until we lose it. Because for us, Oppenheimer's been really steady this whole time. And I imagine it will continue to be for like a while. But, if you run like a larger theater and stuff, it is important for newer big releases to get these large premium formats. It's where a lot of the grosses come from. And yes, Blue Beetle was designed for... HBO Max or whatever. So it's not like like the best movie maybe to watch in IMAX, but I don't know. I happened to look at one of the AMC's near me, like in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. If you guys are from around here or lived here, the AMC Hoffman in Alexandria. I'm thinking about going there to see a movie this weekend maybe, but I haven't been in a while. But I've looked, and every show of Blue Beetle on Saturday on their IMAX screen is sold out. Totally sold out, and that was like 2 days ago, and I was like, maybe just it was just certain communities that the movie's doing very well with, but I just thought that was kind of like a weird thing that people were getting real, I don't want to say mad, but just like making a big deal out of it, you know what I mean? And I just want to say that obviously, if like a lot of the more like diehard, I don't know, film Twitter bro types are very anti-superhero movies, and I understand that. We're all kind of sick of the cape stuff, but I felt like Blue Beetle's like having kind of a harmless movie, and it's kind of sweet, and it doesn't feel like it is deserving of the vitriol that I saw, I'll just say. And I kind of hope that people at least give it a chance. Like, it feels different than a lot of the stuff that we've been complaining about, and I thought it was like a nice little movie. I realize I do that a lot where I say like, it's nice, it's fine, but like sometimes movies are just nice and they're fine and like they're good to watch with friends and stuff. Like it's not the fucking end of the world. So if you want my actual thoughts about Blue Beetle, please watch that review. It's up on the channel. I'll guess I'll link it in the show notes. I don't actually have anything to really talk about that like didn't fit into the review. I think I got most of it in there, but I think it's a sweet little movie. You guys should check it out. Also, Susan Sarandon's in it. She's hot. So there's 2 major news things I wanted to talk about. They're not really major news things, whatever. Things in the news, things in the media this week. And then one thing that's like way more niche, but I just wanted to talk about it. So maybe I'll just mark it on the show notes if anyone wants to skip over that part when we get to it. But kicking things off with, Netflix released the trailer for Maestro, the new Leonard Bernstein biopic from Bradley Cooper, directed by Bradley Cooper, co-written by Bradley Cooper, and I think Josh Singer, and starring Bradley Cooper as Leonard Bernstein. And I'm surprised this discourse didn't pick up sooner. Like, I know the trailer makes more people see it, but months and months ago, there were pictures of Bradley on set or production stills or whatever, showing that he was wearing a prosthetic nose to play Leonard Bernstein, who is Jewish. Bradley Cooper is not. And there's, I don't know, but people are calling it Schnozgate, maybe. I don't know, but like the sort of the Jew face allegations, well, let's say Bradley Cooper's having difficulty beating them because people have just been posting pictures of Leonard Bernstein, like in profile, and you can see the size of his nose, and then Bradley Cooper's nose, and they're roughly the same. So the idea that Bradley Cooper really felt like the only way I can really capture this person's essence is with a fucking comical, like near goblin style prosthetic nose. It's insane to me that he did that and everybody was just cool with it. And the thing about it is, otherwise, I think the trailer looks nice. I think it looks like a sweet movie. The last time I doubted Bradley Cooper's skills, we got A Star Is Born, a movie I like quite a bit. He's obviously trying to get like an Oscar for this one and stuff, and I think they shot it on film. I think Matthew Libatique is the cinematographer. It looks like a beautiful movie. Everything about it looks sweet, you know? But this nose thing, and like, I guess Leonard Bernstein's family came out and they were like, look, he's a really good guy. He doesn't hate Jewish people. This is just a creative choice and we're fine with it. We don't care. And I don't know, maybe they're hoping to get like residuals from, I don't know, Spotify streams going up of his scores or something after this movie. I don't know. But I mean, I believe them. I mean, if they're working close with Bradley Cooper, I don't think they would just like lie about that. But also, maybe it's bigger than them. I'm not Jewish. It's not my place to like pontificate about how I feel about the nose. I just know that it also looks cartoonish. Like everything about it makes the rest of the project seem like a joke. Even though I'm sure it's probably a very passionate and earnest film. Like I'm pretty sure it's probably pretty good. I don't know anything about it beyond the trailer I saw. I'm not super familiar about anything about Leonard Bernstein's life, but I feel like it's probably gonna be a good movie. But the whole time you're just gonna be looking at the fucking nose because it looks like a Dick Tracy villain. You know, it doesn't make sense. And people started sharing when Bradley Cooper did The Elephant Man on, I don't know if it was on Broadway or just like a stage show he did. I don't know if it was like for real, but you know, he didn't want to wear the prosthetics to play the Elephant Man, so he's just making funny faces and contorting his body. And I'm shocked that there's not just more memes about this because he looks so laughable, basically. But whatever. I think the real thing about this that we have to kind of address and accept is that Bradley Cooper desperately probably wants an Academy Award as an actor specifically. And the chances of this performance being better than his performance as Rocket in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is like so slim. And that's not me being like a Cape Brain guy who like, you know, I'll bring this up later in one of the movies I talk about, but there's a thing that people do anytime an actor does anything in a movie. It's like the first thing they have to say is like, oh, that makes me think he could play this superhero or whatever. I'll talk about that later. But with this, I like Bradley Cooper a lot. But I don't know that any of his performances outside of being Rocket are as good as his voice work as Rocket. Like, I don't think that's even like a hot take. I've seen basically every movie he's done. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to tell me you think his performance in American Sniper was better than this? You're going to tell me you think his performance as Jeff Bridges playing Eddie Vedder in A Star Is Born is better than this? Like every other performance he has, I'm like, man, okay, sorry, I take it back. I don't know that his Rocket is better than his John Peters in Licorice Pizza. That's a fucking amazing performance. I'm not going to take that away from the man. So I've been pretty hardcore on the Bradley Cooper train lately. I fuck with him heavy. This nose thing is weird, you know? Like so many things happen in Hollywood where I think I don't understand why it's not someone's job to just go, no. Like, I think that there's so many movies and like ideas and things that famous rich people do where I don't know whether it's not just like a friend they have who's just like a guy. It's just like a person who's just like, hey dude, take the fucking nose off. Let's do a take without the nose. See how you feel. See, isn't that better? You know, like I feel like maybe he needed to wear it during rehearsals for himself or something to make him feel more like Leonard. I don't know, but like so many movies and TV shows and things, I just feel like there needs to be a person off stage left who's just like, yeah, let's not do that. just common sense stuff. And like, I don't know, maybe that person just doesn't get listened to. Sometimes I wish that was my job. Just let me hang around and just kind of vet certain ideas. I don't know how I would get that job, but I think I'd be good at it. The other thing I want to talk about in the media today, I know you guys have seen the discourse, or maybe you haven't. Maybe a lot of my listeners are just normal people, in which case I fucking envy you all. But I don't know if you guys have seen this New York Times article. I'll link it in the show notes about MovieTok and about TikTok film enthusiast influencers. And I talked about this a few episodes ago with the Straw Hat Goofy discourse about him scabbing and being a gleeful scab, and that a lot of influencer types are just stoked to, you know, be shills for corporations and stuff. And I read this article finally because I saw it getting shared around. I saw people arguing about it. I saw a lot of Critic friends and critics that I follow talking about it. And I feel like the article made me very sad. I'll say that straight up, like, before everything else. This is an article that made me, like, super fucking bummed. Look, if you haven't read it, I encourage you to actually read it. But if you haven't read it, it's basically just about MovieTok, about the fact there's all these influencers on TikTok who make movie-branded content, movie tech content, and how in many ways they're essentially, like, taking the place of the modern film critic. And a lot of film critics talk about them in pretty harsh tones, and just in general. And I think it's always their critiques of film, MovieTok is always sort of hand waved as being like, well, you guys are just jealous. Like, film critics are just jealous that they can't get paid thousands of dollars by the studios to promote Insidious: The Red Door. And it's like, well, yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm fucking jealous. I'm extremely jealous that I do what I do and not what you guys do, which I personally find somewhat repugnant. But yeah, I'm jealous of the money for sure. Like, you guys don't understand something about me as a person. I like to think that I have a lot of integrity. I like to think that I'm a good guy. I try anyway. But once a month, I have like a really strong urge to just give up everything that I'm doing and completely convert all of my digital footprint to being a right-wing grifter. Like, I want to fight in the culture war. I want to have disingenuous opinions about the poor. I don't think I could keep it up for very long is my thing. I don't think I could keep a straight face. They would put me on like one too many like YouTube debates with Destiny or something, and I would just start cracking up and it'd be like, he's not one of us, get him out of here. But maybe I could for a few months pull it off. I could act like I like Pearl, you know. We could just say horrible things about. I could just be like misogynistic and racist and classist, and like people would just give me tons of money for it. Like, I'm so jealous of that. I don't think that MovieTok influencers are as bad as right-wing grifters, but I feel like it's on a similar wavelength, which is that you've convinced yourself that you're doing something, or maybe maybe you haven't convinced yourself, maybe you're just lying to yourself too, that you're doing like a good service to people, but really you're just kind of serving yourself and your corporate masters. And one of the things, there's a couple of things in the article that kind of annoyed and frustrated me. One of the things was like, first of all, there's this belief that like film critics are out of touch. And that's why Rotten Tomatoes has the divide between the critic score and the audience score. And like, realistically speaking, that divide is not that strong on a lot of movies. Like, there are movies where it is strong on, where like a Transformers movie comes out, critics hate it, people like it or whatever. But not a lot of movies, they're way more aligned. And a lot of very successful films are also critically successful. Like, critics like them. That happens all the time. But whatever, for the narrative anyway, critics are out of touch. And they don't really cater to the needs and interests of the casual person. I've been a critic for 10 years. I've definitely gotten this energy from people before. Generally speaking, when they don't like a review of mine. I don't get a ton of negative feedback. I get like way less than anybody I know. But when I do, it generally is sort of like, not even at me specifically, but just like the idea of being a critic. Like, who are you to critique this? Who are you to say what's good and bad? Like, well, you're just a fucking YouTuber. Why don't you go make a movie? And it's like, I feel like if like someone tried to fix your car and they didn't do a good job, you would like give them a bad review on like, do people, I don't know if people Yelp automotive stuff, whatever, but like you would complain, right? They can't respond to you with like, why don't you come in here and fucking fix this transmission? If you have a bad time at a restaurant, the cook can't come and be like, why don't you fucking come in here and make this foie gras, you know? I guess if you're John Favreau and chef, you could, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's this, I feel like movies are the main, or any kind of art, it's the main thing where if you're a critic, it's like, why don't you fucking make art? It's like I don't know. There's this thing that happens when it comes to people talking about the function of criticism, which is that if you're a critic and you share your opinions, you're not qualified. What makes you special? You don't watch. You didn't make a movie. Da da da. But then if like a regular these MovieTok influencers, just regular people who don't consider themselves critics, who just consider themselves fans, who just like watching movies, like they think their opinions are then valid. Like, do you know what I mean? Like if my fucking opinions, I've seen like almost 4,000 movies in my life. I've written hundreds of movie reviews. I've read countless books about film and film theory. I've watched, like, my opinion is like not valid because I never made a movie. What the fuck is yours? How is your opinion valid? And like, you don't know shit. Like a lot of, I want to be very clear. There are plenty of people on MovieTok who make really good content and like are have interesting opinions and stuff like that. Like I don't want this to seem like a blatant statement, you know. But a lot of the people, they're just shills. I'm sorry, like they are. Everything they post is just like, I never say anything bad about any movies because it'll fuck up my brand deals. I always say nice things about everything. They act like they're these disruptors, like they're fighting back against like this sort of like horrible critical class of film snobs who are ruining movies, but somehow they only ever champion big studio pictures. Somehow they only ever champion like fucking movies with animated squirrels and superheroes and stuff, and the occasional horror movie, and then they'll have like a video doing a top 10 about the horror genre, and it's like clear they don't know fucking dick about the horror genre. You know, there's just, okay, I told myself I would not come off like a bitter fucking asshole, so I'm going to try not to do that. But it's frustrating for me because what I do is I don't think it's easy, and I think I try really hard at it. And I am very proud of the community that I've built. And I'm very proud of the fact that people like anything that I do, or that people get any value out of anything that I do. Like, I'm very proud of that. I'm not going to discount that. Like, super proud, super stoked. I love it. But when you like see some fucking guy talking into like his little Apple EarPods microphone on the wire and stuff about stuff that you didn't notice in Pixar, like a lot of these people, you have to understand, a lot of these like TikTok influencers and stuff are just like regurgitating shit from like fucking cracked articles from years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of their actual base of knowledge is like second, third, fourth hand just stuff that they're presenting to new people that never read that stuff as if they like figured it out. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times they're really, really just like redoing existing content, you know? So that's frustrating. And then beyond that, a lot of times there's this sense that like this is better in some way, that like this is more real. Like just a person on TikTok telling you a movie you should see that they very likely got paid to say that about, or trying to get paid to say that about, that their opinion is more what like film as like a social construct right now needs than like what critics do. And that is infuriating to me. Do you know what I mean? Like that is something that like I just have a hard time abiding by. Like one of the quotes in the article was saying that like, you know, when you read a movie review, it's like a computer wrote it. You know, you don't get a sense of who the person is. And like on TikTok, you watch us every day and you hear our voice and stuff, so you get to know. And the thing is, that's been true of film criticism forever. Like if you read film criticism or you follow specific critics, you do get to learn their voice. You do get to understand their views and their interests and stuff. Like maybe they're not doing it in vertical video form. But for years before I ever became like a critic, and even before I started like the YouTube channel and stuff, there's always been film critics whose work I admire and whose work I follow. And like, there's a through line to that because they have a voice. Now, obviously in today's climate, it's harder and harder as a critic to get paid to be a critic. And a lot of times you do end up writing for platforms and publications where you're somewhat discouraged from having a voice. So surely there's definitely reviews that all sound cookie cutter and are like overlong and bloated because they have to be for word count for people to make their, pay their bills and stuff. So like, I'm not pretending that like all film criticism is good. But that just got to me, because it's just like, you guys are just like making up problems to insist that like what you do is an improvement. The fact that the article like compares them to like Pauline Kael and like Cahiers de Cinema is insane to me. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, I'm sorry, but there's, on MovieTok, it's kind of split between like, there's the people who think everything is like snobby, like they make jokes about like, this is what independent movies are like, but they don't watch any, so their jokes don't make any sense. And they act like, oh, well, if anytime someone like has a critique of like a superhero movie, their response is like, oh, I'm sorry, it's not some foreign Scandinavian black and white 4-hour movie. And like, they always have these weird jokes about what they think film people like. And it's like, how can you be so proudly incurious? How can you be so satisfied with yourself that you're just not interested in other things, And there's two major things I want to say about this. Thing one is that it's interesting to me that these people are getting these like defense articles, sort of, that there's criticism of them, especially that the criticism is happening at the same time as the strikes, and people are largely criticizing them for scab-like behavior. And they're getting these defenses about like, this is just the future of film criticism, and this is where it is, and things have to change, and the old ways are going away, and this is what young people like. And, I'm not anti-TikTok or whatever. I love TikTok. I'm on TikTok all the fucking time. I think it's kind of like my favorite social media platform. If I didn't have a job, like, this sounds really snobby a little bit, but if I didn't have a day job, I would make TikToks way more frequently than I do. Like, I think they're fun. I just like, to make what I like making is time consuming, and I don't know if I have enough time, quite frankly. I have to pick my battles, and my battles are the videos in the pod, But I like TikTok. I'm pro TikTok. I think it's a cool platform. And I don't like that people always act like it's like uniquely evil compared to other social media platforms. It's way less cursed than like Twitter/X or whatever. But I don't like that these people are kind of getting this like, get behind me meme of like the soldier and like all the stuff's coming at his back and someone's in bed. Like, this is just like the traditional media protecting these weirdos. And the last time there was a big like shift in film criticism was like when like online film criticism like became big during the age and era of Ain't It Cool News and Chud and stuff like that. And I feel like people were way more willing to demonize those guys when there was a bunch of like fat, schlubby, bearded nerds and like incel precursors who just like obsessed about Star Wars, and they were constantly compromising their whatever editorial integrity in order to get visits to like superhero movie sets and stuff. When it was those guys, I don't think those guys were getting anywhere near as many articles defending them, at least that I remember. It was like, no, those guys fucking suck. It was like, sure, there's things wrong about in criticism, but fuck Harry Knowles, which I still support that statement, never mind. But like, a lot of these guys, it was like very clear that what they were doing was like, they were just nerds who were shills. Not all of them. Some of them were good writers. I'm not trying to, some people made it out of that alive. I'm not trying to be a hater. But like, I feel people had way fewer qualms about calling them what they were at the time. You know what I mean? Like, if you were fucking on your knees trying to get onto the set of, whatever fantasy, sci-fi, whatever future Saturn Award nominee movie you were obsessed with or something, that was like fine. They're like, well, we're fans and we're critics and we're this. And like, there was that, like, people were like, no, dude, that's not fine. Fuck you, neckbeards. Like they all looked like comic book guy from The Simpsons, and people just hated them. I can't help but think that youth, and in some cases pretty privilege, like some of these younger, like, cool, trendy, whatever MovieTok people, it's like they're equally obviously transparent in how they're not really helping like movies as a culture, but there's like this defense of them as like, well, they're younger and like it's cool. And it's like, if Straw Hat Goofy looked like fucking, I don't know what Quint from Ain't It Cool News looked like, actually. I'm just like a dick if I just start making fun of people's appearance from Ain't It Cool News. That is not my vibe. I'm just saying, by and large, a lot of those guys were like older, like schlubby, like cis white men with like beards, and like a lot of them were fat, and a lot of them had like balding. A lot of them had a look. I'll say. I don't think they had any kind of like defense squad. And it was just like, fuck you, nerd. Like, why can't we just be fuck you, nerd at these people who like insist that liking, like being more excited about the Marvels than like a Martin Scorsese movie is like a virtue of some sort. I don't know. It bothers me. The second thing I want to say too is that I accept the critique of the MovieTok folks when it comes to the fact that they're like corporate shills, when it comes to the fact that they don't have as much integrity about actually exploring and analyzing movies. But I have a hard time being hard on these people's taste the way a lot of people do. I was having a conversation with my friend Kyle Bragg the other week, and he was talking about meeting someone who was just getting into movies. And he was saying how, like, everyone, especially men, I'll say specifically, not to say that women like fundamentally get into movies differently or something like that. I'm just going to say commonly the trope I'm about to describe is like typically guys. And it's like every guy that gets into movies like the exact same fucking way. And like it changes a little bit from generation to generation, you know what I mean? But it's the IMDb top 250. It's the I'm only watching like these 10, 15 perfect classic unassailable movies, and I like movies now. And like you have this slow process of moving from like I really like The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction and The Dark Knight into like other stuff, right? And we were talking about this from a place of like love, which is like everyone was like that at some point. I've seen all these movies, and I think I know a lot, and even I know I don't know as much as I'd like to, and I'm always trying to learn more. But everyone's gonna have a point in their life where like you haven't seen that many movies. It's the Boss Baby tweet, right? It's the like guy whose first movie was Boss Baby watching his second movie, like getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this, and like it's funny and it's a fair thing to use to dunk on people when they have silly opinions or whatever. But we have to remember that everyone starts somewhere. Everyone starts somewhere, and that's okay. And like, if some of these people, there's like some kind of cringy people on MovieTok that like are obsessed with the same handful of movies, the same handful of directors, and like, if I was getting movies now, like today, and not when I was a teenager, like 20 years ago, I would like. Who's to say I wouldn't like Denis Villeneuve more than I do now? Who's to say that I wouldn't have been a little unfairly obsessed with some of these movies that I don't really care that much about? Do you know what I mean? Like I want to hold space for young people and new people to getting into movies. And I don't want to be like a gatekeeper to them. So when I see people who make movie content and I can tell if they're just new, and I can tell if they're just getting started and stuff like that, I'm a lot less critical of that. Because I'm like, hey, you do you, man. Like you'll figure your stuff out, find out who you are, find out what you like. That's fine. Take your time. There's so many movies, there's so much time. What bothers me is when I see people that have sort of like thimbleful knowledge of things, presenting themselves to other people as though they have like this deep reservoir of knowledge. And you end up having like the blind leading the blind. And you like, I've talked to a few of my like contemporaries, I guess, about this. Like I make TikToks occasionally, sometimes to promote videos, sometimes just because I'm bored or whatever. And anytime I use like the MovieTok hashtag, the algorithm will start feeding me Straw Hat Goofy, the J Stubes and stuff like that. I'm just like, oh God. But what bothers me the most is I'll end up on a TikTok and I'll be in the comments, and it's just the most uninformed opinions you've ever seen. It's just people saying things about filmmakers that have no basis in reality or fact. And it's very clear they've never seen those filmmakers work. They're just going off of other people's lazy jokes about those filmmakers that they themselves stole from other people. And, if you try to get into it, you're the weird old millennial defending Quentin Tarantino. You're the weird older millennial who's like, that's not what Wes Anderson does. Like, it's like having knowledge in those situations becomes like a bad thing. Like, I actually know what I'm talking about. And it's like, oh, like you're just, it's like, no, why are you so proudly ignorant? I didn't know a lot when I was a teenager about times from before me, but I wanted to know. I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about the 80s and the 70s and the 60s and stuff. it's astonishing to me that like a lot of these young people don't. They seem to not want to. They think being told to is gatekeeping, and it's like, it's not gatekeeping to tell you. You might want to learn more about the shit that you pontificate about. Like, if you're gonna be this passionate and loud about some of this shit, you should maybe know what the fuck you're talking about, or try to. Or what I hope I do well, maybe I don't, but I hope I do it well, is when I don't know something, I make it very clear that I don't. Like if something's beyond my realm, I'm just like, don't know that. That's not me. You know, like I'm not gonna fucking lie to you guys. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. I think it's sort of a sign of like maturity that you can just say, I don't know that. I don't know. I'll find out later, but I don't know. I went on a little bit too long about this. I have a lot of feelings. I could probably do the entire episode about this shit, but that does not sound fun. So, I'm going to move on to the point 5 news item that I mentioned. And this is 100% skippable. The second I start talking about this, if you don't care, you can scrub through, or it's fine. Tetsuya Naito won the G1 Climax tournament in Japan Pro Wrestling last week. As everyone knows about me, I love pro wrestling, and I have not been watching much wrestling lately. Like, I watch Dynamite in the background most weeks. I'm not a huge fan of the product. I watch Raw sometimes. I watch SmackDown most nights if I'm home, you know, anything to acknowledge my tribal chief. But my real favorite promotion for a very long time in my adult life was New Japan Pro Wrestling, and ever since like 2020, really since like 2018, they've been kind of on a downward slope, but since 2020 specifically, they've been cursed. Just a snake-bitten promotion, and they have not been as good as they used to be. But every year, they have this tournament called the G1 Climax. Every year, the number of combatants and stuff is different, but basically you get put in a block with a bunch of other wrestlers, and then everyone in that block has matches, and then whoever has like the highest points goes to like the finals against the person with the highest points in the other block. And the winner gets like sort of like a guaranteed shot at the world title at the January 4th Tokyo Dome show, like 4 or 5 months later. That's like New Japan's version of WrestleMania, basically. And probably dating, I think from like 2013 to like 2018, I would watch the tournament in full. Like I would wake up repeatedly at like 4 o'clock in the morning to watch it live from Japan, streaming it, or like I would just keep up with all the matches. It's like 40 matches or something every time, and I would watch it religiously. It was like my favorite thing to do. I loved New Japan so much. I love pro wrestling, and I feel like modern wrestling fans are kind of split between liking two different things. A lot of people like what's called like work rate. Like wrestling's obviously scripted, it's predetermined, in many cases choreographed. Like people have matches, and like the moves that they do and all that stuff is like, people really love matches that feel balletic and feel choreographed and feel like complicated, you know, highly athletic, high wire stuff. People jumping, doing flips, doing like complicated sequences back and forth. And when I was younger, I loved that shit. I was like crazy about it. And as I've gotten older, I find that like it just kind of bores me, because a lot of guys do some of the same stuff over and over again, and it's not tethered to any kind of emotion. And I think that pro wrestling is really not about moves. I think it's about emotion. I think it's about storytelling. And so I, controversially among many of my friends, have tended to prefer more like the WWE style lately, where they tell stories and like things are more about the drama and the emotion of it. And like also the work rate is good, but it's not as like, you know, ridiculous as other stuff. So that's just me. That's like my personal taste. It's not, you know, whatever. There's a lot of tribalism between the two promotions and fans of the two promotions, but for my money, I always prefer New Japan because it felt like a mix of both. Like they did have very high work rate. For a long time, they had some of like the best workers in the world. And they had these storylines that were always built on long-standing rivalries and relationships between wrestlers. So Tetsuya Naito is one of my faves, and he's like in his late 30s now, or early 40s. I'm not sure how old he is now, but he's so beat up. He's been a top guy in New Japan for like 5 or 6 years. He was a major underdog for a long time, and he finally got this like really big win in 2020 that we'd been waiting for him for like years, and then everything in society went to shit. So I sort of feel like Naito winning in the Tokyo Dome in 2020 actually is the cause of everything else that's gone wrong in the world. So I sort of figured, well, you know, he's cursed. Like this guy finally got his moment in the sun as the top guy in the company, and then like COVID happened, injuries happened, a lot of people got sick, all these different things. I assumed he was never going to get another shot at doing anything big in the company. And I didn't watch much of the G1 this year. They had a lot of guys in it that I just didn't care about. They used 4 blocks instead of 2. It was just more complicated. There was like a round robin, whatever. It was, I did not want to watch it. But if you want to give pro wrestling a shot and you don't know a lot about wrestling or anything, if you can get your hands on, it's probably streaming on like Billy or Daily Motion or something, but the semi-final for this year's G1 is Tetsuya Naito and Will Ospreay, this British wrestler who I don't like very much. Like he's like very impressive athletically and stuff like that, but I don't think he's a very good storyteller in general. And people fucking love this guy. Like they think he's like the greatest of all time or whatever. I don't think that, but some of his matches are good, some of them are not. He had a match with Naito, and it tells this really good story. And it's not even the thing is, it's not even like a hard story to tell because it's real. Ospreay is like this young, juiced up, like athletic guy who's definitely been doing steroids for too long. He has so many injuries, he's banged up that he has this kind of car crash vibe to him. When he does all of his cool flippy moves now, he's bigger than he used to be when he did them, and he's like hurt and stuff. So there's more of a chaos to his performance. And Tetsuya Naito is one of the best big match workers of like the modern era. He can do like 30 to 40 minute main event style better than a lot of guys. His fucking knees are gone. He's everything about him. He's held together by sticks. And watching the match, it's just a story of like this old veteran who won't go down. And it is so well done. It's like probably my favorite wrestling match of the year. And I did not anticipate that happening. I was really, really into it. I was so crazy about the near falls and stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure that at some point in the end of the match, Naito gets legit knocked out on accident, because you can like actually hear Ospreay like talking him through the last couple of spots of the match, which like is sort of a bad thing, I guess, whatever. But like the fact they pulled it off, Ospreay was able to finish the match with like a dead guy essentially is kind of impressive to me. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe that was just a next level work, and then Naito's just that smart. But no, I think he got fucked up. He looked rough. But that was a semifinal match. He ended up going on to the finals against Kazuchika Okada, the other like big huge star in New Japan. He's like one of my favorites. They have a years long rivalry. They had a match back in like 2011, I want to say, and that was the match that actually got me into New Japan. So it's so cool to have seen them grow so much over the last like decade. They had a big match together. It was really good. It was about on par with other matches. Don't go out of your way to watch that one. But Naito won. It was really cool to see him win, and like it was kind of the best thing that I saw happen in the world this week. It made me feel really good. I've been feeling like a broke down, like my metaphorical knees are shot. I can't do the Stardust press anymore. So seeing Naito get that big win, his boys came out and stuff, and he did a little speech at the end. Like it was really heartwarming. I really liked it. And yeah, I don't know. That just made me feel good. That's why I want to talk about it. I like to see my boy win. It almost felt better than when he won in the Dome in 2020 because it wasn't immediately precipitated by being cursed. So moving on to what I watched this week. I watched 2 movies that I'm not going to talk about a lot because I reviewed them. So I watched Blue Beetle. Told you guys about the review already. I also watched the Sterling K. Brown, Mark Duplass movie Biosphere on the recommendation from the homie Dylan Roth. I reviewed that for the Beat. That's not going to come out until Wednesday. So like, you guys can read my review there when it comes out. But one thing that I thought was really cool in both movies was they both had this life finds a way kind of vibe. There was an optimism to them that I really needed this week as well. It's not been a great week for me. And it was nice to see 2 pieces of art or whatever that had this kind of like indomitable spirit to them. This sort of irascible, like, things are going to be good. Almost like an aggressive things are going to be okay type shit. You'll see the Blue Beetle, and I thought it was really touching. And sometimes we need stuff like that. We need stories to tell us that. So, but I watched 4 movies I'll talk about. My letterbox last 4. The first movie I watched was Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, which was a pretty rad movie, actually. Guy Ritchie has always been kind of a fave. Like I like the early Guy Ritchie style movies. Something interesting that's happened with him though is like after, we've all known the Guy Ritchie style, the huge cast, sprawling 90s Pulp Fiction style, but with like Cockney accents thing. He hasn't made a movie like that since The Gentleman, which is a really good movie actually, but that's the mode of Guy Ritchie most people know when they think Guy Ritchie. Then there's like this other Guy Ritchie, the Guy Ritchie that made the Sherlock Holmes movies, that made those Disney. He made Aladdin, and like the one that made Man from U.N.C.L.E. You know what I mean? Like this kind of like boisterous, excitable mainstream action filmmaker. That's kind of like a different Guy Ritchie. Now we're getting into this like third era of Ritchie that, like, Wrath of Man, you know, has this vibe of him becoming like a little darker, a little more mature, kind of playing in a similar sandbox to like Michael Mann a little bit, and like also like a little bit of like Mamet. There's like this sense of, you know, like these guys who tell stories about like men who have to like do what men do and honor and shit like that, and like how you're bound by being a man and whatever. Like The Gentleman actually had that vibe thematically, even though stylistically it was more like an old Guy Ritchie movie. But Wrath of Man was darker and more violent. I felt like a little more brutal and more this new thing. So The Covenant kind of continues in that way. It's like a war movie. Jake Gyllenhaal plays like a officer in like Iraq or whatever, Afghanistan, I guess. My bad. And he has this interpreter that basically like saves his life. And I forgot to write down the actor who plays the interpreter. I'm sorry, but he was really fucking good. And the interpreter basically saves his life, but then is trapped in you know, like in the Middle East, like trying to save his family because the Taliban wants him dead. So Jake Gyllenhaal has to go in and like save him himself, because that's what men do. And I'm oversimplifying the movie. The movie actually is deeper than that. I apologize, but it was so good. It was so like, it had such good dudes rock energy. At the core is like these two men kind of being bound to each other, which is really, I was really into that. Like, admittedly, you know, it's a movie that like, I don't know, one of the things about the movie is like Jake Gyllenhaal's character, when he gets home, like can't sleep because he has to, he has, I think his exact wording is like, there's a hook in me. You know, he has to do this for this man. He has to go save him the way he was saved. And then once he does, like, he gets to finally sleep, which I thought was like a cool little thing. But I just remember thinking like, man, so you can sleep on all the like people you killed though, like everything else is cool. That's fun. You know, it's one of those, anytime you make a movie about the Middle East and the war, it's like hard to reckon with everything about it, right? Like it's a thorny, complicated thing. And like any movie that like glorifies it or whatever in any way can, you know, can seem irresponsible. But I think that they did a really great job of focusing specifically on just like the plight of the interpreters who would like be hired for these jobs, be promised like citizenship and all this stuff, and then just get fucked and just get left over there to die. So it felt very much like one of those, we, the viewer, need for a good thing to come out of this bad war. And that good thing is going to be Jake Gyllenhaal with his beautiful blue eyes saving this man, because it's just and it's right and it's the correct thing to do. Like the first half of the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal is just kind of being like kind of like a cocky hotshot guy. Like he's decent at doing that. It's not until he survives this ordeal that the movie then becomes, he becomes this like haunted, driven force. There's one particular, Jake Gyllenhaal's so good, dudes. Like he's become like one of my favorite actors in the modern era. Between this and like Ambulance, like Nightcrawler and stuff, like he's just been on a fucking run. He's so good. And there's this bit where he's like trying to call and get this guy, the interpreter, his family's visas, and it's not working. He's just yelling at people and all the bureaucracy and the red tape. And then it cuts to a scene where his like superior officer, it's like two guys. It's John Lee Miller, who for whatever reason in this movie is trying really hard to sound like Willem Dafoe. I don't know what that was about, but it's a choice. And then Alexander Ludwig, I think his name is, the brother from Heels on Stars. And they're like talking about the fact that he's been going on this tear trying to get these visas, and they just play a video recording of him yelling at someone on the like on the call, and it's just him screaming like, "I'll fucking kill you, this man's stuck in a cave." But it's like the audio is like peaking, and but you're just looking at Jake Gyllenhaal's face like, yeah, like I did that because someone has to. Like they're presenting it like, this is ridiculous that you're doing this, and he's like, this man saved my fucking life. The least I can do is yell at someone on the phone for him. And he ends up having to pay these paramilitary guys to get him back in to save the guy. And it's Anthony Starr. It's always funny seeing like Homelander not play Homelander. And like they can't help him because they have some other thing they have to do, so he has to go it alone. Real cowboy shit. And I don't know if I'm selling this movie well. Like maybe this isn't your jam. I don't like war movies in general, but Jake and this guy, they had something. There's some magic between them that I was really, really feeling. Like, there's this sense of, it's such a strange movie. Like, the entire sequence of him being saved and being dragged through like hills and mountains and stuff by this guy is like, feels very spiritual. Like it's just Guy Ritchie's, he's on I don't know, he's on some weird new wavelength that I'm really curious about. I want to see where it goes. Like I'm liking it, I'm really, really liking everything that's happening with it. It just feels right. Like the score is interesting for this type of movie. Everything about it, I was like very pleasantly surprised. I then watched another movie that I was not pleasantly surprised by. I watched Infinity Pool. And Infinity Pool did it for me so little that it actually changed the course of the rest of my day. I'd made a list of 4 movies I wanted to watch. I was off Wednesday. I was like, let's watch the movies. One of them I watched because I was originally planning to make a whole video about it, but then having seen it, I was like, I don't have enough to say, so I can't. But we'll get to that one after this. But I watched Infinity Pool because I've been meaning to like all year. I liked Brandon Cronenberg's last film, Possessor, a lot. I think it's one of the most visceral movies I've ever seen about like people's relationship to labor and like working and being exploited and like work-life balance and stuff. Like I thought that was like so just like a razor sharp movie, a really, really good shit. This just kind of feels like an episode of Black Mirror or something. I don't know. I want to preface this by saying that some other time in my life, maybe I'll revisit Infinity Pool in a better mood or something, and I'll end up really seeing the appeal in it. But I did not. Like, Alexander Skarsgård plays a novelist. Him and his wife go to, like, this fictional faraway place as a resort. And then, like, he gets drunk and, like, runs over one of the locals and then finds out that the locals have this thing where, like, if you commit a crime while you're there, instead of you serving out your sentence or whatever, they'll clone you. And then you have to watch your clone get executed. So like in the case of this, it's like the firstborn son of the man he ran over is going to kill a clone of him. And that's kind of crazy. Definitely you can see that this is David Cronenberg's son. But then you discover that all these other rich people who are there vacationing have known about this, and they come here specifically for that. They come to do crazy shit and wreak havoc and do their own version of the Purge, and then just watch clones of themselves get killed. And I felt like the movie didn't do enough with the clone conceit personally. And I also felt like a lot of the stuff just showing like, look at how far the rich will go if we let them and stuff, and like who can stop them. All that stuff also felt very on the nose. It didn't feel very deep or very affecting, I guess I should say. Skarsgård was good. He was fine. I think I read that Pattinson was originally offered the part. Would have been better. It's basically a one performance movie, which is that Mia Goth plays this woman who ends up kind of like enticing him into this life and like seducing him and stuff, and she's just like a nut. And it's one of those great. Like I said, I think Pearl, one of the best performances the last like 20 years. I think she was amazing in that. And this is like not as good as the performance in Pearl, but it's really good. Like earlier in the pod, I talked about how like when someone does a certain thing good in a movie, there's gonna be some guy who's like, oh, they should play the Scarecrow in the next Batman movie. There's one shot in this movie where Mia Goth is like holding a gun out and like screaming, and someone's like, she'd be so good as Harley Quinn, and I'm like, oh, come on guys, can't you think of anything else? But then unfortunately I watched the movie and I was like, man, she actually probably would. I don't know who'd be her Joker or whatever, I don't even care, but like she'd be good if that happened. So I hope she gets a bag somehow. But also that shot with her and the gun, I think you've probably seen it online before. But it might end up in like the thumbnail for this episode, I'm not sure. But I've always thought it looks like looks exactly like, not exactly, it's sort of like the counterpoint in my mind to the shot of Jim from The Office holding a gun in the promotional stills for Michael Bay's Benghazi movie. It's just like the funniest to me reaction image to send to somebody is just Jim Halpert holding the gun. It looks so fucking ridiculous. But yeah, her performance is cool, and half the movie is just her screaming the name James. It's Alexander Skarsgård's character's name. The whole movie's just like James, James. I can't do it. I can't do her voice, but she sounds like a Victorian child who died twice or something. But really good performance. The movie didn't do anything for me. I felt like fucking nothing. And that's never good. You never want to feel nothing. You want to feel something. I kept thinking too that maybe of all the supporting people were also like casted by like different actors, maybe known actors that would have hit a little bit differently. But yeah, Infinity Pool, it just didn't do anything for me. I don't think it's a bad movie necessarily. I felt very kind of like, ugh. And I'm sorry, Brandon Cronenberg, not for me. So then the movie that I was actually planning the whole week to make a video about, I wasn't planning to make a video about Blue Beetle. I happened to be invited to a screening, and I was like, oh fuck, I guess I'll make a video about Blue Beetle. But I was planning to make a video about the Netflix movie Heart of Stone, starring Gal Gadot, directed by Tom something. When I looked it up, I thought it was the guy that directed The King's Speech, but it's not. It's like the guy that directed The King's Speech and Les Mis. Is it Tom Hopper? The guy that did this movie sounds like the guy that did that movie. It's not that guy. I don't know. That's just what I thought going in. I thought that'd be funny, but I was wrong. Anyway, it's another one of these Netflix high-budgeted franchise starter movies that doesn't exist. And by doesn't exist, I mean that like no one saw it, nobody cared, nobody talks about it. But then somehow the analytics tell you that like no, 50 million people saw this movie. And then I guess Tommy Lee Jones showed up and neuralized them or something, because like nobody talks about it really, other than jokes on Twitter about how it's not real. So I wanted to watch the movie because I wanted to dissect it and explore that idea, like movies like this and like Red Notice and stuff. Like how do they? What are they? You know. But then I watched it, and it was just there's so little there to even make a thing about, if that makes sense. So I knew it was like an action spy thing. I knew it was like a franchise starter, and I knew that Greg Rucka had like come up with the idea for it and like co-wrote it. And I think I mentioned Rucka an episode or two ago when I was talking about Wonder Woman. I like Greg Rucka. It's always been one of my favorite comic book writers. I read his like some of his novels when I was like a teenager. A lot of his work on Batman has always been some of my favorite shit on Batman. I'm glad that he's working apparently on Edward Baker's the Caped Crusader or whatever animated series that J.J. Abrams is producing that's supposed to come out on Amazon Prime with Bruce Timm in them. So like I fuck with Rucka, but this felt like a thing that would have been a novel of his that I didn't like. Like he writes a lot of novels where like there's like a strong female heroine, and like he writes them all identically, like they're all like the same person. So this kind of fit that sort of, but worse. Here's why. Okay, Heart of Stone. Gal Gadot plays this woman who's like the guy in a chair for this team of spies in MI6. She's like the computer hacker person. And in the opening, like 25-minute sequence, it's way too long. She ends up having to like get out of the van to come help them on this field mission. And they play it up like, oh, she never leaves the van. Oh my God, she has to get close to this guy's phone to hack him. Oh my God, it's dangerous because she's not a real field agent. But then the twist is that she's a very good field agent, and she's actually a double agent for this other secret spy organization called the Charter. And she's basically like a James Bond type. Like she's like a fucking super spy. And she's just pretending to be like a dowdy tech girl with MI6 for this job. So, and like her handler is like Schweighofer from Army of the Dead and like Army of Thieves. And he answers to this computer called the Heart. It's basically just like the Entity from Dead Reckoning, but shitty, or altruistic or something. So yeah, every scene in the movie is basically her being like a bumbling Clark Kent type, and then secretly turning into Superman and saving everybody with her like super spy skills, and this computer telling her the trajectory of the ski slope she's running from people on and stuff. And it doesn't fucking work. Okay, like the premise and the setup, I was like, this could have been a good movie. This isn't like a complete disaster. The idea of a movie where there's a team of spies who don't know that the like mousy one on the computer is actually like an elite super spy. Not a bad premise. But why would you cast Gal Gadot in it? Like, why would you do that? Like, her team that you meet, the only famous person on is Jamie Dornan. Kind of low-hanging fruit there. Not a big star. and everybody else is just like, they're like nobodies, and like they don't even like pretend to have, like, if you really wanted to sell this concept, I think you would have to have her whole team be stars, like, or at least like you know, like notable known people, and then you'd probably want to cast someone a little bit more unassuming as the lead, so that the transformation from her, or at least someone who could act, I'll just say that, like it could have been like a big star, but someone who could at least pretend to not be the fucking focal point. Like, she never looks like, you know, like she doesn't like blend in at all. It's just like, from the first, like, I didn't even get the premise until a little bit into it, because I was like, why is she just like is this going to be that she's like the computer girl, and her team's going to die, all of them are going to die, and then she's going to have to become a field agent, we're going to watch her grow or something? Or is it going to be a thing where like, one of Rucka's contemporaries, like Ed Brubaker, has a comic called Velvet, and the central conceit is that there's like this woman who's like the sort of like the money penny like assistant person, and you discover that she actually has this entire past as this amazing crazy spy that nobody knows about. You know, I thought maybe this would be a thing. Oh, there's the computer girl used to be a really good spy, and now she only does computer stuff or something. Whatever. There's a lot of ways they could have taken it. They don't take any of those ways. They just do this other absurd shit, and it's like people fighting over this fucking computer program thing, and like some of like the iconography or whatever is cool. Like, her name's Rachel Stone, and she's like the Queen of Hearts or something, or like everyone has like card suit names, which I feel like Rucka just ripped off from when he wrote Checkmate for DC Comics, where it's a bunch of spies, but they all have like chess names, which I guess is also itself probably ripped off from something else I'm not thinking about, or some novel I've never read, but whatever. It just doesn't fucking work at all. Like, I don't have any like funny jokes about it. It just like fundamentally is like a bad idea. And Gal Gadot is not the person who could sell this idea, because there's supposed to be kind of like bumbling comedy and stuff out of it. And like, she's not funny, and neither is anyone else. And I just kept thinking the whole time, I was making a laundry list of who else could have played this part, and I just kept on going. It was like anybody, essentially. It was like anybody but her could pull this off. It's embarrassing how bad she is in it. And I guess not even bad, maybe just miscast. You know, it's okay to have a performer who has like a limited range or whatever, or you have a shtick. That's cool. You know what I mean? I actually mostly liked her performances as Wonder Woman, to be honest. You know, not so much in like Justice League, but like in the first one, and I guess even the second one, kind of. But and then in the Fast films, she's good because she doesn't have a lot to do. But everything else, I see her and I'm just like, how is this happening? You know, like, I get that she's like attractive and she has like sort of an aura about her, but like, there's just nothing happening up there. And giving her a part like this, it just sucked. It was like a slog to sit through. I felt like I wasn't even there. So watching Infinity Pool and not feeling it at all, and then watching Heart of Stone and having like whatever the opposite of thoughts are. I was originally going to end my night watching Beau is Afraid, but after Infinity Pool, I was like, I don't think I need to watch anything that's too artsy. Not because like it's bad or artsy things are bad. It's just like, clearly I'm not feeling. I feel like I'm about to be on a bad streak because I watched Infinity Pool and I didn't like it, and I watched Heart of Stone and I hated it. I was like, I don't want to. I've heard Beau is Afraid is like contentious and not everybody likes it. I don't want to end my night with a 3-hour movie that I might not like. Call me a coward. I'm sorry. Call me a coward, but I just didn't want to fucking do that. So, instead, while I was thinking of people who could do the thing in Heart of Stone, I was like, you know who could fucking do this? Jennifer Lawrence could do this. Jennifer Lawrence could probably do this role in her sleep. She has range, you know? And then I was like, oh, I never watched No Hard Feelings. Never watched the rom-com she did. I should check that out. And I did, and I loved it. One of my favorite movies of the year. I was so blown away by this movie. We do not get rom-coms like this, or even just mainstream comedies like this anymore, but it's such a crazy. I don't know if you guys. I should probably explain. No Hard Feelings. Jennifer Lawrence plays like a 32-year-old slacker. I guess she like drives for Uber. She lives in Montauk. She's lived her whole life. She hates all the tourists and people who just come for the summer and stuff. And she's in danger of losing her house. And then her car gets repossessed. And without her car, she can't make money to save her house. And so she tries getting other jobs, but she's like really prickly and not good at them. She ends up seeing a Craigslist ad where two parents, Matthew Broderick and an actress I don't remember, are hiring someone to like date their son, and they'll give him a car because they're helicopter parents and they're obsessed, thinking he's not going to be able to be social for college and stuff. So it's essentially like, we're going to give you a car if you fuck our 19-year-old son. I remember seeing the trailer thinking, I cannot fucking believe this is a real movie in 2023. It's such an insane premise. It's just one of those premises where like, I can't fucking believe this is happening. But she's so good in it. Everyone else is good too. I don't want to take away from the rest of the cast, but she's remarkable. Like, I think it's interesting that for when she was very young, Jennifer Lawrence kept being like 24, 25 and getting roles as a woman in her mid-30s, stealing like MILF valor from actresses who would much prefer to get those roles, for fuck's sake. And now she's 32 and she's like a millennial in a movie about a bunch of like Zoomers, and like the movie keeps poking fun at the fact that she doesn't look young, even though she does. I don't know. So I thought that was like an interesting flip. But she's really funny when the movie requires her to be serious. Like, she has like a real presence and real pathos and stuff to her, and I loved it. Like, I thought it was really funny. Like, I laughed a fair bit. But some things I laughed at were kind of inappropriate. Like, there's a bit where Matthew Broderick's character is the father of the main character boy, whose name I already forgot. I'm so bad at remember character names when I watch a lot of movies back to back. But he is talking about like, he doesn't do this. He's naming all these things his son doesn't do. And he's like, he doesn't drive, he doesn't skip school, he doesn't do all this stuff, like things I did when I was younger. And I thought the line was meant to be a bit, because it's like, oh, it's Ferris Bueller all grown up. You know, he doesn't drive, he doesn't do stuff that I did. And then I remembered, like, I think Matthew Broderick killed someone in real life with a car. And it made me wonder, like, did he think about that when he had to shoot this scene? Does that just come up in his mind sometimes? I think that's true. I hope I'm not wrong, and I'm not just besmirching this man's name for no reason. And then I'm thinking about Rebecca Gayheart maybe, but I think she did too. Anyway, vehicular manslaughter aside, I thought JLL was great. And I remember thinking, like, we gotta get her back in stuff. Like, I thought she was really good in Don't Look Down when I saw that, or Don't Look Up, sorry. The Adam McKay movie with Leo DiCaprio that people hated that I kind of loved. I thought she was really great in that. So, like, bring her back. Let's put Gal Gadot in a closet. Let's bring Jennifer Lawrence back. Not that they're directly competing or anything, but I just want to see her in more movies. I thought she was so fun. Like, I don't even have a lot of thoughts to share about No Hard Feelings, really, because like it's just like a really good comedy. It's funny, but it's really sincere and it's really sweet. Like, I can't remember the last time I watched a movie where, like, you know, rom-coms always have that thing that like the main character is hiding from the person they like, and you're wondering when they're going to find out. Sitting there knowing that at some point this boy was going to find out that this girl he like has this deep connection with only is fucking with him for a car. I was like, I hope he just never finds out. Like, I had a stomachache the whole movie. And then when they have to thread that needle and do that, find out like the reveal scene, they did it so well. And then they played off like all the tension. So everything they do in the movie is like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm starved for this kind of movie and haven't watched a new one in a while, but I just remember feeling like this feels like it should be like a cult classic or something. This feels like a movie that people should like study. It's just very well done for what it is. And if you haven't seen No Hard Feelings, check it out. I loved it. Like, I was like over the fucking moon, like easily in my top 10, just hopscotched over a bunch of other movies. I thought it was just really killer. Really good shit. If you haven't seen it, you guys should see it. So those are the movies I watched this week, and we have time for a few questions. I say we have time like I'm gonna get kicked off the air, like I'm not just like home, just like doing this. Anyway, a few questions for this week. From Channel Not Found. Question for next episode. How do you feel about people criticizing a movie, usually a twist movie, for not holding up that well to a second or third viewing? I feel like Sixth Sense and Memento get this a lot. How much should we factor rewatchability into our evaluation of movies? That's a good question. What I think is crazy is that both of the two movies that you listed, Sixth Sense and Memento, are movies that get better after you know the twist. Like, movies that have, to me, I think movies that have good twists, i.e. movies that were like the twist is like surprising but inevitable, you know? And then if you rewatch it, it makes more sense in hindsight. I think those are good movies to rewatch with a twist, because then it makes you look at everything differently. You start seeing things you didn't notice before. Like I talked about The Prestige the other episode. That movie, I know the twist the whole time, and every time I watch it, it gets more and more rich. I feel that way with Memento. I think that every time I watch Memento, I'm more impressed by how well it works and how like it all comes together. So Sixth Sense, same thing. Like once you know and you see all the ways that it was telegraphed and stuff, it's impressive. I do think that like certain movies have twists that are like the twist itself has like an emotional impact. Like I don't know, the first time you've seen Deliverance, the next time you see Deliverance, that's a different experience, right? So movies like that where like the twist is kind of transgressive in nature, or if it's just like if it's like an out of nowhere twist, yeah, those movies always are worse on rewatch because you're like, what a fucking, like if it wasn't, I think good twists are the ones where if you watch it again, it still holds up. And then I think bad twists in general are ones where if you watch it again, you're like, this is silly. I can't believe I watched a whole movie like this. Weird movie to reference right now, but you guys know I like to do this. Identity, a movie where it's like a whodunit, all these people are like dying one by one at this like motel, and then you find out that it's all in this guy's head who has multiple personality disorder, and like it's his personalities killing themselves one by one. Once you rewatch the movie with that knowledge, every scene is like laughable and stupid. You're like, this doesn't even fucking have any weight. This is just happening in the guy's head. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that's the thing. If the twist is good, it'll hold up. If it's not, it won't. I think. Thanks. Question from Kyle Bragg. Question for the pod. Top 3 favorite character actors. I want to say before I say my 3 that I know Kyle's number 1 is Garrett Dillahunt, and he just calls him the Hunt. And like anytime I see Garrett Dillahunt do anything, if he pops up for a second in something, I will stop what I'm doing and text Kyle and be like, "Hey, the Hunt's here." When I saw Widows, he showed up as like the bodyguard guy. I was like, dude, the Hunt. I don't remember the last time I saw Garrett Dillahunt in something. I think the last time I thought I saw him, it was actually Josh Duhamel, and I felt like an asshole, but whatever. He loves Dillahunt. So do I. He's great. My 3 favorite character actors. He hasn't done anything recently, really, but Joe Pantoliano, Memento, Bad Boys, Bound, like everything that man's ever done is like great. I love Joe Pantoliano. I love character actors who feel like this is what they had to be a character actor. Like if they weren't a character actor, they would just have like a regular straight job somewhere and it wouldn't be that weird, but they have to be in movies. They have to like kind of give that like extra flavor of specificity, I think. Movie stars are supposed to be able to kind of play anybody or whatever within their range, but then like character actors, like you kind of have to play a handful of types that fit your face and your shtick or whatever. So, I'm gonna name, I'm gonna put Shea Whigham as one. He's like rocketed himself in like my top 3. I love Shea Whigham. Every time he's in something, I get very excited. I was so stoked that he got added to Mission Impossible, man. Every scene he's in is perfect. He just has this very specific vibe that is very hard to recreate, and everything he's in, he is good. I love Shea Whigham. What a man. I think about his performance on like Vice Principals as like Danny McBride's like ex's like new guy, and how he has this very like genuine heart to him in a show that's otherwise so full of like crazy awful people. Only Shea Whigham, what a man. But my other favorite is this is embarrassing because I can't remember his exact name and I can't pronounce it properly, but I'll just say all the stuff that I know he's in, and I imagine if you guys know him, you will know too. And when I was a kid, one of my favorite movies was The Saint with Val Kilmer, because I love Val Kilmer and I love spy movies. So it's like I love The Saint. The guy who plays the villain in The Saint, the guy who plays Tretiak in The Saint, is like one of my favorite character actors. He's the homeless guy in Batman Begins that gives Bruce Wayne his coat. He's the scientist in Mission Impossible 2 that dies in the plane in the opening. He's in a lot of stuff. And I don't remember his name, but that actor, I love that guy. When that guy shows up, whatever it's for, even if it's for a scene, like, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I've ever been happier in my life than when he popped up as the homeless guy in Batman Begins to give Bruce Wayne that coat. I was like, Tretiak. Or I think in his Mission Impossible, his name might be Vladimir or something. I am sorry, and you are sorry. I just love that guy. He just has like this something about him, man. That guy fucking rocks. After this, I might just go and look a bunch of his movies and watch some, because he's just I'm getting like giggly thinking about Tretiak from The Saint. But he's He's good. That whole opening sequence of Mission Impossible 2, by the way, he just sells it all so good. That's a good character actor can like take a goofy, weird thing and make it something special, you know, and that's what that guy did, and I love him for that. And then my last question, more like a prompt than a question, but I kind of wanted to address it, from Iris Out 23, who, by the way, started off with some very kind things to say about, I was talking about my weird insecurities about thinking that I'm like too much of a movie bro. And she offered a really good alternate perspective to that it really meant a lot to me, and I really appreciate that. It was nice to get that perspective. But you mentioned Shane Black in the last one, and that kind of made me decide to finally watch Lethal Weapon series. I feel good that I made someone watch those or inspired them to. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on those films. Lots of damn good male friendship scenes in those movies. I feel like there were some tone pacing issues in the third. Yeah, but I really love that Murtaugh actually said, "I love you" to Riggs in a moment of sincere vulnerability in that one scene in the boat. Really precious stuff. Okay, so I love Lethal Weapon movies. I love Shane Black, and all of my favorite Shane Black movies are the non-Lethal Weapon stuff. So like, I mean, he wrote the first one. I think he has like a story by credit for 2, and then he just gets story by credits for the rest because he created the characters. But like, so I'm more of a Last Boy Scout, Long Kiss Goodnight guy. But the first Lethal Weapon is so fucking good. Like you every time I watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, this was like, I don't want to say revolutionary, but like you get why it was so. It's like throwing a Molotov cocktail in the room. You know what I mean? Like that, everything about that movie works, and so much of it is Riggs and Murtaugh. Mel Gibson and Danny Glover have crazy chemistry. Mel Gibson is like this crazy hothead who wants to kill himself, and then Danny Glover is this older cop who just wants to survive because he loves his family and has to provide for them. And then him kind of becoming like part of the family, and you know, like the guy having like the war flashbacks and stuff. Everything about it works so well. And what's funny to me is like the first Lethal Weapon is like obviously the best. I've seen 2 like a fair number of times, but I always forget which is which. Like stuff that happens, and I have a handful of movies that I'm like this with. Like Ghostbusters 1 and 2 in my head, one large movie. Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 in my head, one large movie. Lethal Weapon 3, I only remember for Rene Russo and for Joe Pesci. You know what I mean? Louis gets, like, whatever Leo wants, Leo gets, whatever. But the one I think I've actually seen more than any other is 4, which is weird. And 4 is the one where it's like, this has gone on too long. This does not need to exist. Because now Mel Gibson is also the old one, and they're both too old for this shit, and they're fighting Jet Li, and they're being very racist. There's a lot of weird stuff in 4, but I've seen it more than the other ones for whatever reason. I don't know if it just came on TV a lot more. Like, when I was a kid, there's like a handful of movies that I think I used to rewatch with my little sisters all the time. One of them was like Little Nicky, the Adam Sandler movie, and one of them was Lethal Weapon 4. I don't know why. They all turned out great, you know, but I'm sorry that I did that. I love them so much, but I'm sorry that I did that. And my thing about the Lethal Weapon movies is like, I think that as they progress, even though like the bond between Riggs and Murtaugh gets better because it's like the actors kind of carrying it, I think that it's a bummer that there was never another Shane Black one specifically, because I think he's so good at this stuff. And I say that specifically because I read on the internet, I don't know if I still have it, but there was a scriptment, like a treatment, but like almost like a full script that Shane Black and one of his co-writers, I think Anthony Bergazzi, wrote for Lethal Weapon 5 that never got made. And they're making Lethal Weapon 5 now. Richard Donner died, and Mel Gibson's supposed to direct it, and there's a lot there to unpack, obviously. But when I read the one that Shane Black wrote, I don't think they're using it, which is a bummer. I remember thinking like, oh man, if Shane Black came back for this and they really did like a really close Lethal Weapon series out with this movie, it would be really rad. It would be so cool. I would not even have to wrestle myself morally that much to watch it with Mel Gibson in it, which is, I know, sounds bad, but that's how good I thought the script was. I don't remember a lot of the plot details, I'll be real, but when I read it, I remember it was a very good reading experience. And I remember thinking there was so much heart and cool shit in it. And but we're not getting that. I'm pretty sure the one that Mel Gibson's directing is going to suck dick. But wouldn't that be nice? Apparently many of these episodes are just going to end with me thinking, why isn't Shane Black doing this? Shane Black, why aren't you doing... He's never going to make his Doc Savage script that I loved with The Rock. He's never going to... There's all these things I want this man to do that he's not going to do. So I don't know. I know it's a long shot, but if anybody knows Shane Black, just tell him I love him, and tell him whatever I have to do to help him get these movies made, I'll do it. No limits on what I would do for Shane Black. So that is our episode today, folks. Thank you for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube and you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to get notifications whenever I put out new videos and content. And if you're listening to the audio version, whatever platform you're listening to this on, give me a review. Tell people that I'm cool. If you think I'm cool, you don't have to lie for me. I don't want you guys to be like MovieTok shills. But yeah, if you're a listener and supporter of the show, I appreciate you so much. I love talking to you guys every week. I love the questions. I love everything. This is one of the nicer things in my life at this moment. I don't know if that sounds corny or lame, but I just really appreciate you all. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you all next week, or you'll hear me all next week, or you know what I'm talking about. Bye, gang.